Hello operators and welcome back. I am Leonidas, this is Nucleares, and today I am using chemicals, but I'm going to do an in-depth beginner tutorial. I haven't done one for a little while, and some things have changed since the last one that I did. So I wanted to do this for new players. You're brand new to the game, you decided you want to do chemicals. I'm going to do it all in this one video. It's going to be a little bit longer. Those who've been watching some of my other videos, this might be a little repetitive, but this is designed for first-time, brand new players. I'm going to go through a lot of the basics, the concepts, and some more in-depth explanation than I would in a normal video. So let's get started. We're going to go new. We'll go easy so that we don't get any of the audits or anything. We're going to have the plant ready to start operations. Otherwise, we have to purchase every piece of equipment and machinery, supplies, and that's much longer. If you want to see that, I do have a video on that. It's about 2.5 hours long. We are going to turn on our chemical module, and we will turn off the skip initial help and activate all controls. We'll go ahead and go through those on our own. So let's go ahead and get through. This is the warning that comes with a new game every time that you start with chemicals. So go ahead and accept and get going. Please, in the description, find the link to the official Nucleares Discord. You can interact with me, but there's a lot of other players, community members there, and a couple fantastic, really fantastic community helpers to answer questions, help you work through things, give you ideas. You can bounce stuff off of other folks. It's a really great community, so I recommend it. Okay, so here we are. We're just starting up. We will go through all the different functions that it wants us to. Walking, right click, which will allow us to focus in on certain items. Not everything has a description. Oh, that one does. But many things do. So right click will help you get a restriction on those. We're going to do Alt, which gives us this mouse pointer. You can interact with buttons this way, either by walking over and say clicking on it, or you can hold Alt and click it with your hand, or if you hold Alt and Shift, you can click it as many times as you want, and that'll come in handy later, but a little tip for you there. So Tab brings up our tablet. We'll go through and use this. You're going to use this a lot throughout the game. We'll go over that a little later on. G for Geiger counter. If you have a radiation leak, this is what will tell you how much radiation is out there, whether it's dangerous or not. 3.6 Röntgen, remember. T, this is how we speed up time. This is slow, normal, fastest. This is time warp. We won't use this for our purposes. This button here, whenever you get an alarm, if you're on a fast time mode, it will bring it back to normal speed, so that if something's breaking, it doesn't keep going at accelerated rate. So I recommend keeping this turned on. You can also use the corresponding keys on your keyboard, 1, 2, and 3, to speed up and slow down time. The normal, medium, or normal, fast, and fastest. And then last we have H, in case you forget how to do some of these things. So without further ado, here we are. This is the control room. This is where you're going to live. Your bread and butter. This is where you're going to spend 95% of your time here in the reactor. What's this thing called? Reactor. The power plant. We have some diagrams here on the wall that we're not going to go through right now. There's a third one over here. It shows you where some of the pumps are, things like that. We will go through some of these consoles quickly. This one is for radiation containment and things like that. You really won't use it all that much. These output screens will give you information relating to how much energy you're outputting and things like that. Our fuel panel, this is where we would load, unload fuel, open and close hatches, and also change our operation mode that we'll do in a little while. It also shows you your thermal efficiency. Don't worry about this early in the game. And it'll show you kind of your thermal power to electric output here. Something definitely not to worry about early on in the game. Pressurizer, this is kind of a set it and forget it unless you screw something up, in which case it causes problems. What your pressurizer does is normally water boils at 100 degrees. Well, we're going to get a reactor up to 300, 280, maybe 400 degrees. we wouldn't be able to cool it down very well if our water is boiling off at 100. So the pressurizer works to create pressure in the cooling system so that water boils at a higher temperature. It stays in that liquid form to pull away the heat. So this is very important, and we're going to start off, actually we'll just flip all these on before we start our checklist. This is our power console. It dictates where we get our energy from. We do have one backup generator. It is running right now. It runs on fuel, and that fuel is burning. We know because we have a green light on. It's telling us what percentage that we're burning per hour. This isn't very much, but it's more than we want. So we're going to turn on our external power supply first, and we will switch our generator off. I don't know if you could hear in the background, but it did shut down. We do have backup batteries. They don't do much. They'll keep the lights on, a couple essentials, just enough for you to get back and turn on that generator in case of an emergency, or the external power supply. This is our reactor core. This is the main console where we're going to manage the temperature of our fuel. It's also next door neighbor is the control rod panel. We use this these are solid control rods that sit literally like this around the fuel in the center and help control the reaction. We're also going to monitor our xenon and iodine, the concentrations here. More on that a little later. We'll also set our control rods here. If we have more banks is when we would use these. Otherwise you won't be touching it much. But this guy you're going to use a bunch, and this number you're going to rely on pretty heavily. Our coolant system. So the way that all this works is we have a source of fuel here, and it generates heat. As we pull out these control rods, we let that fuel mix with itself and react, create fission. Then it generates heat, and that heat we carry away using water, this primary coolant system, and that heat gets carried away and passed on down the line. It actually does two things. It pulls the heat away from here, helps to cool our fuel, and passes the heat to the next link in the chain. So we'll go over that as we move on down, but we're going to activate this. And here, this is just kind of a readout of the energy that we're producing. We can also turn on cameras to look at different parts of the plant. If you wanted to look at, I don't know, what do we have here? Inside of the core, that's what it looks like. Our fuel is up on the pedestal. It's isolated. It is not yet loaded. So that's why it looks like that. And that's kind of handy so you don't have to run around the building so much. These you won't use. This is how we acknowledge alarms. This is just a infographic for concentration of chemicals. We won't go through that now. Energy generation. This one you're going to be reading off of a lot. This is going to dictate everything else that you do in the rest of the plant, more or less. Here what we're looking at is the demand from the city and how much we're producing. You can have up to 3 generator loops. We started in loop 3. This is for nostalgia reasons from the early game. But loop 3, or loop C, Charlie, is your primary loop. And that's what we're going to be running everything off of. So this shows us what the city's demanding, what they're asking from us. This shows what this particular generator is outputting. And if you had multiples of these going, they would show up here. This is the total of all 3 of these. This then shows what's being delivered to the city. The reason why this and this might be different is because of this screen. Inside, we're using electricity. All the equipment, the pumps, the lights, the doors, these consoles, everything is using electricity. And we can supply ourselves. So it's kind of what we're producing minus this and a couple other things gives us that number. We have a resistor bank. And what this does is, as we're producing electricity, we might be, in fact we will be, especially the early days, game days, we're going to be way over producing what the city wants from us. Well, that extra energy has to go somewhere. So it goes into these resistor banks, which are just heat sinks, if you know anything about them. The electricity goes in, they generate heat, and it just kind of burns off into the atmosphere. Early on, these are very critical. And they're... when you get to kind of a more experienced level, you would use these for startup and shutdown. The skill comes in to be able to meet demand and go up and down with that demand without using your resistor banks. It definitely creates more of a challenge. If these are off, you will damage or possibly even destroy your resistor banks, or I'm sorry, your generators. So resistor banks are very important. I do want to mention a couple things here. Bypass. This will come back to, but this is bypassing steam around your steam turbine. So if you're generating steam but don't want to actually send it to your generator and create electricity, you use this to just skip over that. This is the synchroscope. As our turbine spins up and we're generating electricity, generating energy, we need to get that in phase, in sync with the rest of the frequency. That's the city grid. And we use this to do that. We do it by changing RPMs. Volts, hertz, and amps are just here to be monitored. We don't do anything right now currently in the game. So this is what the city is asking from us. They'll give us a certain power demand. I'm sorry, this is what we're sending to the city, and the voltage based on what they are demanding here. Fortunately, these two are just automatic. We don't have to worry about them. This will always match your outputted voltage. Will match the demanded voltage, unless you have damage, or unless you mess with these, which we shouldn't do. This is an automatic system we don't need to worry about. This is what shunts the power away from your turbine and into your extra power from the turbine and into your resistor banks. So you don't need to worry about these guys. But this is very important, and you'll want to leave this on till you're a little more experienced in the game. We do have a transformer that changes the electricity that's generated from our turbines before it goes out. This is very important. These numbers are very high. They're much higher than previous reactors, and you won't come anywhere close to these numbers. So this will last you quite a while, but they do require maintenance, and so you'll have to get tricky with that. Compensator you don't necessarily need right now. It just helps kind of level off the generated energy levels from your turbines, kind of, sort of. You can leave this off and don't worry about it. If you turn it on or off, you probably won't notice a big difference, especially at the lower demand levels. Steam generator, the bane of everyone's existence. This is the thing that you are going to fiddle with the most and hate the most, and it will probably hate you back. There's a lot going on here. Let's click them on, and then I will show you kind of some of the different parts and what they mean. So if you remember, we generated heat here, and it was kind of pulled away from by our primary coolant pump, and it gets deposited down here at the steam generator. So as that heat, that hot water comes in, it's in a pipe, and it kind of goes into, well, it's this guy right here, this big giant steel tube or vessel container, and there's water sitting in it. How much water? Well, this one happens to have 50,000 liters. And as that heat comes in, it boils that water, and that water, as it boils, creates steam, right? Just like you're boiling a pot on the stove. Well, the difference with the pot on the stove is the pot's open, and the steam water vapor just kind of goes out into the room, and you don't really notice anything. Maybe your glasses get fogged up or something like that, but that's about it. Because this is enclosed and the steam has nowhere to go, it gets trapped inside and it builds up pressure. Too much pressure and that thing will explode, just like a pressure cooker at your house. So there's kind of a balance between these two. As we create heat, we boil this off, and this is going to drop. Don't worry about the drops, please. Please don't chase the colors. Don't think that because it's in the red it's bad, or yellow it's less bad, or green it's better. Don't chase, especially the lows, early on until you understand how they work and how to manipulate them. I don't look at this. I do not look at the reds, especially on my steam generator, also on my condenser. Don't worry about them. It will if you chase it, it will mess you up and make things even worse than you want, and you'll get extra frustrated. So as our pressure goes up, we have to send it somewhere or let it explode. There's a couple things you can do with that steam. Using our main steam control valve. This is the valve that you open up. It takes this steam that's being generated in our steam generator from the boiling action, and it sends it down a pipe into our turbine. That steam comes through, and just like you're blowing on a fan or an old pinwheel, when you blow on it, it spins. Same thing. That steam turns that fan, and that fan turns the electric generator, which generates the electricity. Well, except that steam, once it goes past the fan, has to go somewhere. And so after it hits the turbine and spins the blade, the fan, it goes to the condenser. The condenser is the thing that cools that steam down so that it becomes water. Because if you in your house, if you could somehow capture the steam that is coming off of your boiling pot of water and cool it down, it would become, well, water again. And then what we do with that water that we've collected from the steam is, well, we send it back to the steam generator to be turned into water again. Because if this is a finite limit, eventually we're going to burn all this off and we're going to have nothing left except for a really hot metal container that's not doing anybody any good. So there's 3 different loops. You have loop 1 that takes heat from the reactor core, sends it down to the steam generator. The steam generator takes that steam and sends it to the turbine, to the condenser, and back to the steam generator. So you have this, imagine you have this unit of heat that you could somehow magically see. It would start here, it's created here, it gets picked up by this guy and whisked away to the steam generator. It's inside the steam generator, gets handed off to this second loop, the steam generator loop. It creates steam and goes to the turbine and then comes back and gets deposited in the condenser. Well, as our condenser then heats up, we need that heat to go somewhere. It's got to come out the end of our chain somewhere, and that's where the cooling towers come in. Those iconic towers that you see on TV or pictures of, right? The giant nuclear towers, we have those, and that's where the heat ends up dissipating. And that's the life of a unit of heat in a nuclear reactor, and including our power plant. So all of these work in conjunction, and it's a dance, it's a ballad, and you got to move the steps. And some things have to happen in a certain order, and you adjust based on what one is doing. And it's complex, but once you understand how each of these things work together, you can see something and react to it in real time without having to think, okay, well, this went up, so that must go down. This is 6, so that must be 12. It's not like that. And if you try to think of it that way, it's going to be really frustrating. You're not going to be able to get what you want out of the game and out of this system. So if this was tough to follow along, let me give you something simpler, like a map. This is everything I just described. Here's our core. And that primary coolant pump, this guy right here, well, him, he's pumping water. That actual pump is right here. So it takes water and it pushes it through the core where it gets hot. So we have hot water coming out, and that hot water dumps in the steam generator. Well, that doesn't dump, it passes through. That's a better way to say it. It passes through the steam generator. And it's taking a bunch of its heat and passing it off to the steam generator and coming out cold. Not cold, it's still hundreds of degrees, but go with me. Comes in hot, comes out cold, and gets pumped back in. And so that's our first loop. And that's the loop that both cools down our core and takes that heat and transfers it to the next step. Then we move on to our secondary loop. So the heat from here is then turned into steam, which goes through our turbine and then into the condenser, where it is then cooled. That same water that was inside here is cooled back down to water, and it gets pulled through and pumped back around. It doesn't actually go in. Imagine it's going behind the back into the steam generator as cold water, to be turned into steam again, to go to the turbine, or through the turbine, to be turned into water, and it continues. This is loop number 2. So the heat from here gets passed to here, and it gets dumped off in here. Then this is where our condenser pump takes the hot water, right? Because the hot water that came in had to heat a third water, and this is the third water, and it gets pumped through, goes to the cooling towers where it gets cooled off. Finally, comes back as cold water into here to be heated up again, to be turning steam back into water, right? So this water is taking the final unit of heat, dropping it off in the tower, and then coming back. So you have, and this is our tertiary loop, or a third loop. So you have loop 1, loop 2, loop 3. Hot water out, cold water back. Hot steam out, cold water back. Hot water out, cold water back. And that's how everything works. So there are certain items that you got to take into consideration. The first is the temperature. If our temperature in our steam generator is less than 100 degrees, I'm holding right mouse click, it's showing my value of 20. It's 20 degrees in our steam generator right now. If this is less than 100, we're not making steam. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius or centigrade at sea level. When this is above 100, you are creating steam. This level will drop as you generate steam. Except that you're generating steam on a massive scale. It's not like your little pot on the stove at home where you can just leave it for 20 minutes, come back, and you don't really notice that big of a drop. This you will. It can drop quickly, and it will. Thousands and thousands of liters. Usually, starting out with 50, I end up with about 15 once this reactor's up and running. And all that volume is steam running through pipes. A little bit back in the condenser, but it's all through the system everywhere. So the first thing we're watching is our temperature. We got to get that above 100. Next, we're watching our pressure, because I use the analogy of blowing on a fan or a pinwheel, right? You blow on it and it moves pretty easily. Well, when it's light plastic, but when it's made out of steel, it's going to require quite a bit of wind force, as you're blowing on it, to get that thing to spin. The same concept applies. There's a mechanical resistance that we have to overcome in our turbine. So you have to get a pressure up high enough to be able to get this guy to spin, and we measure that in torque. If the torque is not high enough, if we're not blowing hard enough on those blades, on the fan inside the turbine, it will not spin. Plain and simple. So this needs to get high enough. We do that by creating steam. Right? The more steam that's being trapped in there, the higher the pressure. So those are a couple of things that we look at, right? And then again, we're monitoring our level, except for that early on, you're just making sure it's not bottoming out. This comes into play during startup and shutdown. And if you want to see more about that, go look at another one of my videos. What these gauges are measuring is the temperature coming in to the steam generator. This temperature is that water. So as the water leaves here and comes into the steam generator, that's that little dial right there. It's measuring the temperature, because of course as it travels, yes, this game is that complex, that as it travels through the pipes, it's going to heat the pipe. And it's going to transfer a little bit of that heat. You're going to have a heat loss. It's not going to be the exact same temperature when it exits the core as when it enters the steam generator, because it takes time and it's passing through. And these pipes conduct heat. And yes, it is that realistic. So that's what this is measuring. They'll be close, right? But not exact. So we're measuring the temperature coming into our steam generator. The other one is measuring the temperature going out, right, of just this loop. And what that's telling us is how many, you can think of it as units of heat we are getting out of the core. I'm telling you right now, it's not a lot. The difference between these will probably be 3 to 6 degrees. Really not very much. The best I've ever gotten is 16, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is what it is. When the temperature comes back in, the water temperature, when it comes back in, is still pretty high. That's where we're measuring the core inlet. This is as the water comes back in to cool off our fuel block. How hot is it? Because imagine this. You've got something hot, let's say a hot rock, and you want to cool off that rock because the rock is, well, radioactive and it's doing fission and it's heating itself up. So you put it under running water in a faucet, and that water pulls the heat away by heating up itself. The water itself heats up. Well, imagine instead of just going down the drain off into the sewer and out to wherever, that's in a closed loop. It goes down the drain, but then it comes right back up through the faucet, and it's just kind of a circle, and it just keeps repeating. Well, the more times it passes over that rock, the warmer, the hotter that water is going to be, until eventually you're trying to cool down a hot rock with hot water. The rock and water are going to be the same temperature, and then there's no cooling going on. That's what's kind of happening in this. If you don't cool off this primary coolant loop, you're just generating heat over and over and over, and they're going to become the same temperature. So that's where you would measure this. These other gauges, please don't worry about. Not at this stage. You can find other videos where I talk about all of these. Don't chase these. Don't think, oh my goodness, I need to get this in the red, or in the green. Oh, this one's low. I gotta beat that. Or this. Leave it. Please leave it. People chase colors and it messes them up and they get super frustrated and they can't figure out why. And rather than play the game for what it's intended for, they are constantly trying to figure out, what did I break and how do I fix it? And it just becomes frustrating and infuriating. So don't chase colors. Anyway, so that's what these are measuring right here. Don't worry about it. I mean, it's nice, it's cool, it's neat that they show you that. Don't run your reactor off of that. That's just the gee whiz, okay? But it will show you what your core inlet temperature is. It also shows you how hot your control rods get when they're coming in. Don't worry about your efficiency factor. Don't worry about your reactivity. So many players rely on the reactivity, and it has changed so much. Don't worry about it. You could never look at this and it won't matter. This is basically a temperature gauge, a fancy temperature gauge. When the game first started, many months ago, maybe even years ago, yes, that did matter, and so some people, it's kind of just legacy that they still use this. Don't. The modern reactor, or the one that we have now, is not dependent on this even a little bit. So don't worry about it. So how do we get heat out of this primary loop? Again, steam generator. The steam generator does. Okay. The speed of this pump right here is this guy. Right? It pulls, it is taking water and bringing it back. So imagine now that we're boiling water. Well, when that water comes back, it's cold, right? When it comes back from the condenser, it's, well, quote unquote cold, and we're dumping it back into our steam generator or evaporator. Well, imagine you had that pot of boiling water on the stove, and as the water level drops because you're making steam, you're filling up water from the faucet, cold water, and dumping it in. Well, that's kind of counteracting what you're trying to do. You're trying to bring heat in because you need heat, you need hot water. But then you're dumping cold water in it. This is part of the balance. You need enough heat to counteract the cold water that's coming back and still make steam. In one of my videos, I think it might have been a blooper. I am trying to, something happened, something went wrong. No, I think it was something that I streamed, where I let this overfill and there wasn't enough space, and I needed to dump a bunch of cold water, but I need enough heat that it's not cooling everything off and sending this into nothingness. It was a mess. It's a mess. So that's part of the balance, is getting enough heat out of this to counteract the cold water that's coming back that we need to come back. If you don't get any cold water back, again, you're going to lose out on having anything to boil off to begin with. If you don't have enough heat, everything's going to cool off. You're not going to be making steam because you're below temperature, and you're going to have no pressure. There's still more of the steam generator. That volume inside that steam generator takes up space. That's kind of the definition of volume. If it's, say, here, okay, let's just imagine it's this black line. The water fills up, that 50,000 liters goes up to here, and all this is just open. Well, as we make steam and it generates here, that water level is dropping. As it drops, there's more space for steam in there. But what if we keep dumping water in? Eventually, if we keep trying to raise that up, we're going to cut off any space for steam. The literal amount of steam that we have available to send to the turbine is going to be way less than what we need. So a lot of people will see that and they freak out. And what they do is they turn on, when I see people and they're starting up and they turn on that condenser pump, I face palm. I go, oh, no. You're killing yourself because you're not leaving any room for steam. You're trying to fill up the condenser. The level from this comes from here. If you want to fill that up, you add to the condenser and then it moves its way over. I won't go into the specifics of how that works, but just please know that. And you're killing it because you're not leaving enough room for steam. You need a certain amount of steam for this to work. It's like trying to remember that blowing on the fan, except for now you take a drink of water and you fill your mouth with whatever your drink is, and you're trying to blow with a mouthful of water. You're not going to have enough force behind that air to blow the fan. It's the same principle, more or less. What we want is a balance, a steam water flow balance, to where the amount of water coming in from the condenser is coming in at the same rate that we are creating steam, so that the level stops. It just sits there like it's frozen. This one and this one and this one. That's what we want. Where the temperature stays the same, the pressure stays the same, and this guy stays the same. When that happens, and one other part of it, we have a good balance. Except that this won't sit still. Because, again, it's got to go somewhere. That's where the MSCV comes in, main steam control valves. Because we're sending that steam on down to the turbine. Right? Because it's what creates the water that comes back in. Oh, hang on. I got to turn off my sound before YouTube dings me. It doesn't like one of the songs. It thinks it's copyrighted. So it is, again, I talk about this dance. Here's the other thing. A lot of people leave this at 100. You can. Absolutely can. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, I think the startup I'm going to do will have this at 100. But I want to give you another visualization of this. We're going back to our fan that we're trying to blow on. Except for, imagine that your mouth is open as wide as you can, and you're trying to fog up a mirror or breathe on your glasses to clean them off. Right? Imagine trying to blow enough air out of your mouth fast enough with it wide open to turn that fan. How easy, that metal fan, to overcome the mechanical resistance, how easy is that going to be? The answer is not very. That's what this is. It's that aperture. It's how wide open your mouth is. This is 100. When I run this, I don't think I've ever gone above 6, maybe 7. Single digit, 6. As in, like, 6. When I say 6, I literally mean, 5, 6. This is your happy spot. Don't go less than 2. In fact, probably until you're more experienced, don't go less than 3. Don't go higher than 6. That's all you need. Because when we lower this down, what we're doing is like our mouth. We're blowing on the fan. We're closing our lips so that we can blow harder on that fan to turn it. If I close it too far, it's the same as, shutting my lips to where, now just not enough air is coming out, period, to spin our fan, to spin our turbine. So this is kind of a Goldilocks zone that you need to keep this in, of between 3 and 6. It will work at 100, so we're going to leave it there for a startup. But it is extremely inefficient. Extremely inefficient. Please just keep that in mind. So that's what the MSCV does. This controls a couple things. One, how quickly we're bringing back that cold water and dumping it in. Also, how quickly we're taking the heat, more or less, from here on down. When you get a balance between the water coming in, that water being turned to steam, and that steam going out to the turbine, and it's all in equilibrium, where your water level doesn't change, your pressure doesn't change, and your power doesn't change, you're at the water flow balance. The steam outlet is directly related to this. Right now it's 0 because there's none coming out. If I set this to 30 or to 3, this is going to be 30. If I set it to 2, this is going to be 20. If I set it to 5, it's going to be 50. This kind of the same thing is going to relate to your coolant inlet. It's the amount of liters per minute that you're bringing out of cold water. If I set this to 25, it's going to be, this is double. 25, this is going to be 50. 10 here, I'm going to see 20 here. You have to kind of pretend that there's a decimal place right there. And that what you, well, no, I'm not even going to go through this. We're not going to worry about it. You can see another video. Look for my high pressure startup or my alternate startup, and I'll explain more of that. So just know that that's the relation of these numbers. And then this is just how much the coolant evaporated. This is how much you are boiling off at that moment. The goal is to get all three of these numbers to be the same. 50, 50, 50, 40, 40, 40, 30, 30, 30, whatever it is. That's your goal. And if we do this right, we're going to get it there. So steam generator, very complex, a lot to it. When you see it in action, hopefully it'll be a little bit different. The condenser, it's a set it and forget it. It really is. The one thing to keep in mind about this, guys, you need the vacuum because it's what draws that steam through. So it is kind of important. But this coolant pump here is the one that takes the water from out there. So you kind of, that control panel does two different things. It does affect the second loop, but it also does affect the third loop as well. The last thing I'm going to say about the MSCV is if you ever put it to 0 while the pump is running, you're going to create, you're shutting off this valve right here. This is the MSCV, which means that it can pump cold water in. It cannot let steam out. Okay, eventually, you can only get so much water in here before you damage your pump. That's called an overload. Additionally, if you have these cut off to where there's no steam coming through or the water's not being pulled through from the condenser right here, then you're going to run it dry. Or if there's just no water in the steam generator, you're running it dry. This is that bypass I was talking about. How it just goes, and it goes straight from the steam condenser or steam generator, to the condenser, bypasses the turbine. That's the visual representation of it. It's red right now because it's closed. Gray means open, nothing in it. Green means open, there is stuff in it. These will turn green when they're on and in use. I think this one goes red when you shut it down, just to show that it's off, but it's kind of a bug. They should fix it eventually. If you're trying, eventually, if you close this off, because you will be able to take some water from the condenser and send it back, but only until this reaches a certain volume. Eventually this blocks it up from sending it on. So you can damage things. Just know that sometimes when you close the MSCV, you won't be able to fill this anymore, and you can cause damage if you let it go too long. How long have we been talking? 36 minutes. Oh my goodness, folks. Okay. Okay, condenser. Set it and forget it. Don't worry about this guy. That has to do with pressure. You kind of don't want pressure. That's kind of an emergency thing. If the temp gets too high, like over 100, you can turn this on. Let me give you, I'm only going to give you 5. There are 8 things that will trip your turbine. What I mean by trip your turbine is as this spins up, there's a certain point where it'll just stop spinning. It'll spool down, you can hear it, and you'll stop generating power. There's 8 things that cause that to happen. I'm just going to go through a few. If this temperature gets to 100 degrees, you will no longer generate steam in your steam generator. If you're no longer generating steam in your steam generator, guess what's being sent to your turbine? Nothing. It will stall. That's your first one. This being at 100 degrees or more will stall. The higher it is, the more efficient it is. For our purposes, the beginning, leave it at low. 20 degrees, you can keep it there all game long. And that's just fine. Less efficient, but it's just fine. Don't let this get above 100. Number 2, temperature in your steam generator dropping below 100 degrees. Again, water boils at 100. If this drops below 100, guess what we're not generating? Guess what's not going to the turbine? That's number 2. Don't let this go below 100. Don't let this go above 100. Don't let this go below 100. 35 bar. If this drops below 35 bar, that's not always true. Later in the game, as you've got more stuff going on, it could be you could go below 35. Just between 30 and 35. We're just going to use 35 bar. If it drops below, you will not be pushing enough steam this away to make it spin. And you will trip the turbine. It'll spool down. Those are your three main ones. Number 4 is torque. If this goes below 2.5, it means it's not receiving enough steam passing over it in order to turn the turbine. So that's kind of number 4-ish. No, it's not. That's a bonus for you. There's a number of things that can cause that. There's 2 things that you can directly do to cause this. I guess 3 things. First is if this is too low to push enough steam. The second is if you bypass. You can bypass a portion of the steam coming through or all of it. Anything between 0% and 100%. Right now it's at 0%. And that's kind of like as you're blowing on the fan in your hand. If you use your other hand to kind of deflect some of the air away, that pinwheel's not going to spin as fast. Same thing with the bypass. So that will cause the torque to drop. It'll also, less torque means less energy generated. So you can use that to your benefit, but we're not going to worry about that now. So that's number 4 is right here. The bypass. Number 5 is your MSCV. If you close this off, the steam that's being generated in the steam generator is not passing through the pipe to get to your turbine. So obviously we're not getting the steam there. It's not going to work. I hope that makes sense. The ones you need to worry about, don't worry about that one. Worry about these 2 guys. Temp, pressure. Don't let it get below 100. Don't let it get below 35. If either of these are dropping too close, crank up this guy right here. Crank it up. You will bring more heat from the reactor and send it down there. These 2 are related. When one goes up, the other goes up. Not always, but they will eventually follow. I'm speaking in general terms for our purposes for this beginner tutorial. Okay, so that's the concept of all of this. We're taking heat from here, and we're cooling it off with this guy. At the same time, we're kind of taking that whisking that heat away. We're whisking it down to our steam generator, where that heat is then turned into steam. That steam is passed on to our turbine to create electricity, brought back to our condenser to go from steam back to water, so that it can be boiled off into steam again. But the heat that's collected here by the condenser is then sent out our cooling towers outside for that heat to begin here and end its journey out the building, creating clouds and humidity. That's it. Just that simple. I'm not going to go over too many more basics. There's water inside the core. Inside the core that you can see over here, this dark area, that is this guy. There is water on the outside. That's more of like a containment. It helps with cooling, helps with radiation, things like that. But all the swirling water goes on inside. Yeah, let's go with that. The last thing to go over, chemicals. Without going into too much in this, because again I have other videos. Boron, in the form of boric acid, this is a liquid. It gets injected into your core. Boron acts as a liquid control rod. You have a solid one here, you have a liquid one here. They do the same thing. More of one means you need less of the other, or vice versa. The more boron you insert, the less solid control rod you're going to need. If you have both of these maxed out, you will not create heat. It will shut down the nuclear reaction. You won't have heat. I'm not going to go into the details of all the things about that. That's a very generic, basic overview. As time goes on, there's things like xenon that act as another control rod, but you don't have control over it. It's a byproduct of your fuel that will kind of kill your reactor and bring the temperature down, but you can't really control it. So just know that. Iodine, I believe, if I remember right, xenon comes from iodine. So whatever your iodine level is, about 7 or 9 hours later, it'll be turned into xenon. Don't freak out. Once you get your boron, you set it to where you want it, then use your control rods to kind of fine tune and keep that temperature where you want it. There's two ways to play. You can add boron and remove it with this filter pump that takes boron out. Dosing it adds more in. So you can use it like control rods. Oh, I need it hotter. I turn this on. Less control rod, more heat. Oh, I need it colder. I'm going to add more boron, more control rod. And then, yeah, more control rod, less heat. Less control rod, more heat. I think I said that backward. Pumps and things to move stuff around. Find that in another video. Okay. Conceptually, we're done. We're at 45 minutes. Let's see if we can get this up and running in 15. I don't think we can. Time for a checklist. Who loves a checklist? I love a checklist. So let's go. We have turned on all of our consoles. We need to drain our RCV. RCV, recirculation, circuit valve, something. It drains this out. Notice we're at 2426 here. Because we're adding boron in liquid form, if we get that to 2500 the max, pressurizer and other things will stop working. It is a bad day. So we're going to turn that on. We're going to run over. We're going to watch this very closely. When it gets to 2345, 2350, we're going to run over and shut it off. Because when you turn the pump off, it will, actually not 45, 2390. I don't know what I was thinking, 2390. When it gets to time to close it, it takes time for that actuator to actuate and actually close it. So you'll see this will keep dropping. We're looking for 2350 is ideal. We'll get to as close as we can. And pretty close-ish. Yeah, good enough. Okay, so that's the first thing we do. If you inject boron and then open that, you're just taking boron and sending it into that storage tank where the RCV leads to, and that's no good. We don't want that. So keep the boron where it belongs. Additionally, if this is too hot and you send water over, you can damage that tank and, well, rupture it even. Okay, so RCV closed. Oh, let me update my checklist here online so I don't mix that up. Okay. This next part is going to happen quickly, so bear with me. We're going to go dosing pump at 50, which is the maximum we can put it to. It takes a while to inject boron. I can't sit here and talk for a long time while it does that, otherwise I'll get too much. So we put that at 50. Our external power is already on. Our generator is already on manual. We only want it on automatic when we're running so that if there's a power outage, something gets damaged, it'll kick itself on automatically. Pressurizer, we need our heater on, and we need a thermostat on. That's it. That's the last you're going to do. What we're watching for here is this temperature to get up to 150. We can't do anything else until this gets to 150. It takes... this temperature needs to rise. That rising temperature will cause this pressure to rise, and that pressure will cause this pressure to rise. And there she goes. While we're waiting for that, we're going to turn some other things on. The first thing is our condenser vacuum. We need that on, and it takes a minute to kick over. We'll click it there, and you'll see this is going to jump, I don't know, 20 or so, and then, 10. Okay. So that will work its magic. We need resistor bank on, which we already did. Bypass. I'm going to do a different one. So we're going to go bypass. Well, bypass will always be 0. We want all that steam hitting the turbine. In this case, we're going MSCV to 100. We're going to wait for our vessel pressure to get up to 150. Actually, while it's doing that, we are going to turn this to nominal or normal mode.
New operating mode established. Nominal mode.
Shut down nominal maximum. Change some of the alarm thresholds and also lock out certain things. If this were in shutdown, I couldn't load my fuel. Like we saw on the camera, the fuel is isolated. We want to unisolate it. You'll see a little animation of it entering the fuel, or I'm sorry, entering the core, and it's now in there being surrounded by, well, both solid and liquid rods. So we're waiting for this to come up still, and while that's doing its thing, we're going to turn our actually I want to wait for that to get 150. So we'll let this continue doing its thing. It goes up very slowly. What we're aiming for here is 3100. We want 3100. Again, we got to shut it off. It does at the beginning stages. It's going to drop as it's going up, and it's because boron is moving through all the pipes. It's not right now because the pump's not running. Once I turn the pump on, this will actually go down and up and down and up. This 50 means that every minute of the game, this is going to increase in 50. So at 750, it's going to be 1356. We'll see if I'm right. It'll take a second. There we go. Look at that time change. It's like I've done it a time or two. So we're waiting. We're almost there. As soon as that hits 150, things really start to happen quickly. And you know what? I'm going to turn the sound on for this because it's kind of neat. And if you're a first timer, you might not have ever heard it. So YouTube can just hit me with the copyright. Okay, comes up pretty quickly. Okay, let's start going. Pump on, and we're setting this one to 50. Okay, there it goes.
Reactor core coolant has started to circulate.
Outstanding. We are going to turn our condenser on. We're going to set it to 50, which is actually way too high, but you know what, we're going to go 25. Let's just do 25. Okay, now we're ready to make heat. Let's go ahead and pull our control rods, and we're going to pull these to, let's go 92. As more boron enters the core, we're going to need less and less solid fuel rods. Okay, so it does that animation because the temperature's coming up. When it hits 50 degrees-ish, it's going to give another animation. Check your volume. It tends to be loud. It might have fixed it, but historically it's been a little bit loud. So it's coming up on 50. Check your volume. You'll see an animation. 55, I guess, is when it does it now. There it goes. We'll get a little message.
The reactor has reached critical mass, and its status has changed to reactive.
Very cool. I'm actually going to bring this down even further because I want it to speed up quicker. Okay, so now what we are looking for with this type of setup is this temperature. As soon as this hits 100 degrees, I am starting my secondary pump and I'm turning it on to 25. This is a simplified startup. So we now go start. We now go slow at 25. And like magic, it should work. Okay, so we're going to watch that spool up real quick. Okay, that's alive. So let's come back and check where we're at here. Ooh, yeah, okay. That's going a lot faster. So to get this temperature up, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go 85, live wild. By the time that this gets to 3,100, we're probably going to have our control rods out to around 68 or 70. Okay, so this is going, right, it's coming up. Our pressure is coming up. I know I said not to do this, but this is an alternative method, a much simpler method, a set it and forget it. And now we're just waiting for it to generate enough steam for it to push this turbine. Like I said, look how far we've dropped. We've already burned off 14,000 liters of water, created steam. Our steam generation, we're generating 257 liters a minute of steam. This is how much is being sent out. 20 liters. Okay, the coolant's not showing any coming in. That's because we're burning off more than what we're generating. Okay, let's come back and check our guy over here. So what's going to happen is at about 3,000, I'm going to dial this back to 10. and let it do its thing. We're aiming for 300 right here, and it is actually climbing quite a bit faster than I anticipated, which is just fine. So we will move this up shortly. Again, I wish I could give you certain numbers, but because I've been talking so much, it's hard to. I'm okay with it going up, with it going over. Eventually it'll kind of top out and come on its way down. But for now, let's try 86. And we are, nope, too far. We're coming down. So let's pull these out. Oh, no, it's not. It's going up. Did I not read it right? I did not read it right. Let's go 87. Sorry, it's late my time. Still going up. Let's go 89. We'll jump by 2. It's going less and starting to come back down. Okay, now let's run back over here. Check our... So we want to catch it before it hits that 3,000. Okay, we're good. Come back over here. Do we have enough torque? Nope. Do we have enough pressure? Yeah, we should be getting it any minute. Oh, right on cue. Did you hear it? Did you hear it, folks? Did you hear it? Let's go. Okay, where are we at? The numbers bounce a lot more with this new patch 177. So you have to kind of get it's. I usually run it on triple speed, which I don't recommend as you're just starting up, especially for the first time. So you have to kind of get a mental average going. So this is coming down quite a bit more, and the reason for that, because remember it was just a minute ago it was flying up. Well, the reason for that is because our buddy Boron is being injected, right? And he's coming up. So as he comes up, the more control rods you have, the cooler this is going to get. So again, we're pulling these out to try and keep up. So we're going to come out here. We're probably going to go a bunch. Yeah, let's go 85. Not only do I need to... and that's fine. I'm okay with that. That'll be just fine. I'd rather overshoot than undershoot because it's going to drop pretty quick. Now what we're waiting for here is for this to get to 3060 before our sinker stope comes alive. If you need this to be slowed down and explained, I have an entire video. It's short. I think it's 3 or 4 minutes that explains how that works. I'm not going to do it here because we're already... Oh, we're 5 minutes from an hour. My goal was an hour for this video. We'll see how I do. So far, I'm not doing great. But look, we've already hit that max. It has leveled off. It's going to start coming down the more boron we inject. So where are we at here? 25. We're not even... We still got a little ways to go. So it's coming down still. Nice and easy. I'm going to go 2 speed. Hit the button 2 on my keyboard. And notice how this pressure is holding nicely. Right around 56. Temperature holding nicely. This guy is in the red. Oh no, he's in the red. Leave it. Leave it. Leave it. I will use this opportunity. See how, oh, look at that. Look how fast we're dropping. Oh my goodness. Oh no. Dropping by 2 points. More. 80. Let's go. Still coming down. 75 it is. Because if it goes back up, that's okay. It gets me closer to 100. Come run over here. Oh my goodness gracious. Slow down to 1 speed. If you are right-clicking like this, number, you'll hear me mashing my keyboard. You cannot speed up or slow down. So what's going to happen is we're going to, as this gets closer, right now, again, every... Is it still coming down? It is. Quite a bit because our core pump's going so fast. Pretty soon this is going to stop. It'll stop going down. But actually we're above where we want to be. So let's go 0. I got to yak and I didn't even notice it. But it's jumping 50 every minute. So we are still coming down. Let's go all the way down to 70, please. Let's take a look over here. Still coming up. Okay, so while this is doing its thing, I wanted to talk... Oh, my goodness. Silly me. Forgot to request startup. Okay, if you're going to request startup, you got to do it before 50 past the hour. Because generally it takes about 10 or so minutes for them to come back with the time that you can start up. Again, more on that in the Synchro video. I forgot what I was going to talk about over here. See how that volume's coming back? Oh, I remember the balance here. Look how we're almost balanced. what these numbers are telling me is that I'm allowing 55 out. I'm allowing at 61 is being generated, and the coolant coming in is 50. So you can kind of get an idea, and this will jump up and down, up and down, up and down. You can kind of get an idea of where the balance is, and I can actually reduce this, say to 90, and this won't change. Because again, that aperture is open so wide, that mouth is open so wide, that you're not even getting this number matching. If I bring this down to 5, then it would close it off. This would become 50. Again, this number doubled is this number. And this is just a function of how much heat we're taking from down here. Where, oh my goodness, look how cold we are. Let's go all the way to 67 and see what happens. You're gonna come back up? Oh, looks like we found kind of our sweet spot. So let's actually go a little bit less so we can bring that temperature up. Nope, wrong button, wrong way. We're gonna cool it off. We're gonna cool it off even further. Okay, let's take a look. Did it settle down? Sure did. 3164. A little higher than we wanted to be, but that's okay. We will take it. It has settled. It has stopped, and it's just going to sit there forever. So to get this guy to heat up, I'm probably going to have to come way back. Let's go 62. Heat. Little bit. I don't think it's going to get to 300. I'll bet you it doesn't. Okay, so we're getting closer to that 3,000. We're not really reaching equilibrium, but we also won't because of the values that we have here. Again, what I normally run at is, well, to start up is 15, 25, and 5 on the MSCV. But you have to look at different parameters, and there's a slightly different way of starting up. So don't try and use those. But once everything's up and running, we can adjust it to come back to that. This, oh no, did they give us, oh, the city hosed us. I think it was too late. Yeah, 1600. Darn it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the synchroscope you're just going to have to watch for another day because I won't be able to close and deliver to the city. So go find that video. Are we getting up there? Slowly. Okay, maybe it'll make a liar out of me. This guy's still sitting at 3164. He's not really going to move much. He will a little bit over time, but not a ton. I'm going to speed things up. Go on triple speed now. It's easier for me to gauge numbers and trends when I'm at triple speed. So this is going to come up steadily, and then I will put it in probably at, we're going to try 63 when this gets to 300 and let it just sit there for a minute. See if that's enough to hold it. Oh, did you stall out? You sure did, you. Oh, nope, now he's doing it. Okay, so let's go 63. Is that too much? You're going to come down? I'm on triple speed. Yeah, still going up. Oh, just a little bit. 64. So it is cooling off a little bit. Nope, it's about frozen. We about found the spot. Okay, so I think I said 68. Well, now it's 64. A little different every time you do it. Okay, so this is going to sit like this for a while, unfortunately, and there's just nothing that I can do about it. Normally, I would be messing with the synchroscope like this. I would push it here and raise, moving this up one at a time. Don't mash these until this is at above 3050. It'll always stop at 3052 with this current reactor. But when the city time kicks in at 1600, you're going to see the little dot move around. It's too slow because it's under 3060. And then my goal is to stop it up here at the top, wait for this guy to go green, and then this has to turn green. And then I close the circuit breaker so that I'm delivering electricity. But notice that every megawatt that we're producing right now is being shunted away to the what are they called? Resistor banks. Over time, that number will settle down. I think it was up in the 30s, maybe the 40s, when a little bit ago. But now things are starting to settle down a little bit. And actually, I will just demonstrate that now, even though, yeah, I'm over my time. So you can stick around if you'd like to see me fiddle with this. But this has been a beginner's guide to starting the. Actually, I'm not going to fiddle with it, so don't stick around. But this has been a beginner's guide to a startup with chemicals. Hopefully, I have explained a little bit about how the concepts work, how boron is basically a liquid form of the control rod, and how you have to balance them. As you get more of this guy, you pull out more of this guy. If I had no chemicals working, if I just never turned it on, 93 would be plenty, and I'd probably stay there the entire time during the startup. My temperature would end up about 320, and it would fall a lot more. The liquid boron causes the temperature to remain a lot more steady. And if I want to cool it off or heat it up, I do it with the control rods now. That's just my method. You could use boron if you wanted. Add more, take more away. It's up to you. Oh, are we within time? We are. 1600 hour. Not even paying attention. So we're going to wait for it to come around. We're going to raise it as it gets close. I'm holding Alt, by the way. And one more. Okay, so we're green, 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 and we close. Now this is going to drop because the city's using 10 of what we're producing. So this should go to 10 because that's the overage that's being shunted away. Ta-da! What's my alarm for? Why do I have an alarm? Something's damaged. I'll bet it's this guy. I'll bet if you spin up your turbines and let them wait too long to connect to the city, I think it damages them even though you have the resistor bank on. So then we go to our best friend AO, right? We turn him on. We'll get a little award for it, and we tell him to go do maintenance, and he'll tell us what's broken. If you want to see that, check out another video. I've been going on too long already. If you want to see him and go through all the achievements, go through one of my quick start guides, or even my playthrough of the tutorial, because this is what you need to get everything up and running. AO can perform certain tasks. You have him do maintenance analysis. He will come back with everything, with the status of the whole plant. He'll have some things that need fixing right here. You can have him do some. Some require the components, the machinery to be off to perform, which might require an entire shutdown, or you can get creative on how to do it. Again, I got lots of videos demonstrating that. So I know I went over my time by about 5 minutes. Thanks for stopping by. I hope this was helpful. If you found anything confusing, if I said something wrong, if you have another idea or question, please leave a comment. I'm not here for the subscriptions or the likes or the fame or any of that. I'm just here to help others discover this game, explain it to them conceptually so that they can do their own thing, have fun, and enjoy it as much as I do. Please come check us out on the Discord. I don't own it, run it, operate it. It's not mine. I didn't create it. I just like to participate, and it's a great resource to bounce ideas off of live people. So anyway, I'm Leonidas. This is Nucleares. Thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you again soon.